Hello everybody and welcome to a new video here at PBG with me and Daniel from Quick Learner. We are revisiting an old format that we called the PBG podcast. We only have done I think 5 of these episodes. People have always said they wanted more. And I'll be real, I needed a video for Tuesday. It's Monday. This video is coming out on the 27th. We're recording this on the 26th, so quick turnaround time for this one. But I've always liked doing the podcast format, and to be real, there's been a lot of times, Daniel, when you and I were recording, we would actually just end up talking about the game. And then you were like, we should be recording this. And then you're right, we probably should just be recording this. So that's kind of the vibe here. We're gonna take a topic. Sometimes there's not even gonna be topics. We're just gonna be talking freely about the game. But expect us to do this more on the channel. Mm-hmm. For this first episode, as we revisit it, we have a topic that I want to talk about because it's been on my mind because the dust has settled since the announcement of the current and legacy format changes coming to the Fantasy Flight game, Living Card Games lineup. If you don't know what this is, I'll have a link to both mine and, you know what, Daniel videos too down in the description where we talk about this. And you can go read all the very civil comments that were in our comment chains in those videos.
Oh, I want to talk about one comment in particular. We'll get there, though.
Sure. But I think that there was a big, I don't know about you, but there was a pretty big reaction when this first came out. The news sounded very scary. And I remember when I made my video about it, a big thing that I had when I was saying about it was that this is not good news, this is not bad news, this is just news. Which is kind of how I felt about it. I wasn't super positive, super negative. I was just kind of oh, this makes sense. Money-wise, I get why they're doing this. How did you feel when this initially was announced?
Gosh, when did this happen? Was it 2 or 3 months ago now?
Yeah, I think so. It sounds about right.
It feels at the same time like it just was announced, and also it's been ages, right?
It feels like this has been a year. Yeah, 100%.
And part of that is because we still don't actually know anything about what's going to happen other than it's going to happen next year at some point. So my first reaction, I think, was pretty similar. There's equal parts of disappointment of oh gosh, things are gonna have to change, right? And I like the game has been really good, and now things have to be a little different. And we'll talk about in detail what those kinds of things are, I suppose, as we talk about the scant details we have. But I agree. I don't want to say misgivings, but really it was just sort of okay, a little bit of fear about what will the game be like after this? What are the expectations of both the users, the players, and the designers about what the game looks like? Because until now, we've had basically just one idea.
Yeah.
You use every card in the game.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way of what you just said, and it's kind of similar to how I felt, and I think why the reaction was what it was is that change ultimately is scary. People don't like change in anything, right? Even on the big scale terms of just living your own life, a sudden change is a very scary thing. But when it comes down to your hobbies, the reaction to change is a similar sort of kind of anger, disappointment, fear, right? I think those are all very normal emotions to have, which is why I I don't know about you, but for I'm a pretty positive person. So when news comes out about Arkham and anything of my hobbies, I generally skew to be a bit more positive because that's just how I am myself, right? But I didn't want to. I didn't have that for this change, which was very different than everything else. Because I remember when they changed the release format, I was like, oh, this is great. In the grand scheme of things, that was a much smaller change than what this change is. This is them acknowledging we can't keep stuff in print. And it was very interesting that it was, I think you summed up my feelings in a way I wasn't really sure how I was feeling about it, which was just change is scary. Yeah.
That said, I don't think necessarily all of those changes were bad. It's just sort of a we don't know, and we've
Yep.
been put in this pattern, this stasis, right, where from now until whenever they announce something next, which on FFG's schedule is who knows.
Yeah.
We don't really know. Like maybe there's a lot of good things. They did like drop a couple of ideas that they had about like what this meant for what gets printed in the future and what won't get printed in the future.
Yeah.
But any information other than things will change, we really don't know. So like don't believe anyone who thinks that some set will be always available or that they're going to reprint half the cards that already exist. Like all these ideas are crazy, man.
Yeah,
like
we
don't know
nothing.
anything.
We essentially got like a text from FFG that said we need to talk, and you're like, should I be scared? And they're like, no, everything's fine. And then you're like, so what's it about? And they're like, we'll talk to you in a year. Like it's like one of those things, right? And you just have like that dread at first that comes with it. But I do think that that's kind of like a thing that I think is very important to stress what you just said, and also for this video. Everything that we're going to be talking about that is not in that announcement article that first came out we're just guessing, right? We're like hoping. But the reality is that we know nothing. So if you see someone, I'm going to echo what you said, talking about how like Dunich Legacy, for example, is going to be evergreen, or like the Investigator starter decks are going to be evergreen, we know nothing about that. We just like there's nothing that has been revealed. And there has been like no rumors either from any sort of like substantial source. This is just like hearsay that has been out there. Yeah. So what we do know,
like, I'm not.
Sorry. You go.
I was gonna say I'm also like not entirely negative. Like maybe what I've just said about fear is just kind of the nature of not knowing, right?
Yep.
But I don't think that this like change is necessarily gonna matter that much for like. Let's be real. This is a game, right?
Yeah.
This is not one of your friends telling you that they, are going to move away or something, right?
Yeah.
Like this is not actually that big of a deal. And they've said up front, like you can choose how you interact with this game. You kind of always have, right?
Yeah.
So which cards you want to play with and which sets you want to, build your decks with, like they're not coming to your house and taking away your cards. Like that's just that doesn't change anything. So. The only thing for us, I suppose, is like how do we talk about the game going forward, and who is our audience, right? Has our audience on your channel, my channel, been people who own every card already?
That's like the hard thing to know for sure, right? Like, because I get comments. I mean, like, to get into like the Meta PBG. This is something that Travis has made fun of me in videos for the past, but like basically when I start recording a video, I know what level in my head of viewer I'm going for, right? For example, this video, and I never even said this to you, and I very rarely say it to Travis or Bryn, like when the video starts, but this video is for a more enfranchised, own everything, or own half a collection, and they're starting to like worry about trying to own the rest. If you're a new player, we're going to say, like, you can generally tell if I read a card or not, or if I say a lot of different cards that people don't know, right? So, and I'm sure it's kind of the same with you, where you have, like, different points that you try to hit for, like, if you're like, this is a new player video, so I'm going to, like, focus this on new players. Because I think the reality is that we have a wide variety of where they are in the game when they come to our channels, especially because you and I have a lot of new player focused content as well, while also having some more detailed let's talk about stuff in the complex strategies that Arkham can provide.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of what we've said changes with a different take on the game in terms of the card pool. And there's both like good and bad to that. Like we can kind of get back to some of the basics, as it were, with a smaller card pool or fewer things in print. And you have the revised core up here on the screen. Like some of these cards, I think we had a video a few weeks ago, month ago, I don't know anymore, about like forgotten cards, and I said something about Police Badge, and part of the reason I've forgotten about Police Badge is it's in the core set, and we have like triple the number of cards that are in the core set released in just like the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So you don't even think about these cards sometimes. I don't know the last time I played Grotesque Statue.
Yeah. It's yeah. So I think also I want to just before we get even any deeper, at this point now that the dust has settled, even though we've seen no other news, I am actually very excited for the format change, and I'm very interested in hearing more about the format change so I can like start making content about that, right? We're going to touch on this later on for like what content creation is. We might not even get into this episode depending on how much we dive in some of these other topics, who knows. But
who knows?
The other thing too is though, just to like start knowing, right? So we can start like telling the community, hey, here is how things are going to be. This is what you can do if you want to play this way. But I think like the reality is, as the dust settled, I just kind of realized that this is actually more for Marvel Champions than it is for Arkham, which sounds strange to say. But like Arkham is obviously affected by this, right? Because they have a lot of they have a lot of big boxes. But like Marvel Champions has so much in print that's for sale at a store compared to Arkham. It's kind of crazy. I remember when Marvel was first coming out, I was like, oh, these hero packs were a very smart idea, you know? Because then people could just buy like, oh my god, that's Captain America. I love Captain America. I'm going to buy this and the core set and just play Marvel. And with Arkham, we were always like, yeah, but it's a little bit strange where it's just like, here is the Edge of the Earth pack. It's not really the same thing. But now Marvel has, like 4 or 5 cycles with 7 packs each, and they never went to like a bulk purchase the way Arkham did. Except for, I think they did that in one country, they bulked them together. But it's one of those things where I think like in Arkham, the big change is just going to be... things are going out of print, right? Like it's not to the same scope of Marvel Champions where individual like stuff is going to vanish, because Captain America and Doctor Strange are already gone for them, which is crazy that there are people already being like, I guess those are gone. I know Dunich just got another reprint on the Asmodee store.
I read that. Yeah.
So like the final reprint for that, but. It's one of those things where it's like as I got more perspective, I was like, oh man, okay. So what it basically comes down to is I'm much happier with this announcement as an Arkham fan than a Marvel Champions fan, because I think that just because the cadence was less product, it means that the things disappearing is, I think, going to do so at a slower pace, because things were just like printing the boxes was probably a lot easier than printing and shipping all those blister packs.
So do you want to talk about like the kind of pros and cons then of
what
this means, what this is going to look like?
So
maybe we address the FOMO issue first?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest con for sure, right? That it's going to be harder for you, assuming, I think we should also preface this, where we're going to assume that once this is announced, that the revised core set and then like Feast of Hemlock Vale, Drowned City, and the Burning Fires of Cthulhu, the new expansion, are the only things that are going to be in print. I think it's just safe to assume for the conversation in this video, we know nothing about Evergreen. They're just going to all be gone, right? So I think the biggest con is that people aren't going to be able to go to the store or go online and pick up a new copy of like Path to Carcosa.
And it's interesting to talk about it both from the perspective of the player cards and the expansions themselves that are campaigns. Because at least since they went to the new format, they are not the same anymore, right? Going in and getting some player cards means you can play these cards in any deck, in any campaign. But the story, like the actual scenarios that you play in the game, are going away too. And sometimes I feel like, and this is just an us thing, I think, where we've talked about like, hey, what campaign do you want to play? I just played all of them. Right? So having new campaigns has always been good, but for players who haven't bought everything already, the number of different scenarios and campaigns they get to play through with their decks is going to shrink. And actually, that's the part I care about more. I think the player cards are the investigators, the player cards, people are going to miss those. I'm going to miss those. But someone not being able to play the Forgotten Age or Carcosa, really solid entries that, kind of define the game. It's kind of sad if we don't have like an equal number of new ones out there.
Yep.
We have what, 10 campaigns? 11?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
10,
Something
not
like
including revised, I believe.
Okay.
The Zealot.
And does that sound like a lot? Maybe it does, but I feel like I go through them like this now.
I think it's because we have a different perspective where we're like making it as content. Like, because you and I have 2 campaigns going. I'm playing Hemlock with Eric. Travis, Brent, and I are about to start one. You're doing the all 3s, and you probably have like 1 or 2 others that you're doing. I'm playing Hemlock and Drowned City solo myself right now, like 2 different runs. So like, I think we have that different perspective as opposed to someone who is just like playing 1 campaign, 1 scenario a week, right? So,
but at the same time, it's a different answer to that. But if your group only plays 1 campaign every 6 months or maybe once a year, catching up to the release schedule, if you haven't bought all the old stuff, is going to be a bit tough, right?
Yep.
And I know there's people probably thinking, my group got into Arkham 2 years ago. We've played Hemlock Vale. We just got Drowned City. We want to go back to the back catalog and play all those. Or maybe they bought some of those originally and they haven't caught up to the newer ones that have been released. And now it's like, I got to get out and buy all the things that are at my store because I won't have a chance in 2-3 years when my group catches up.
Yeah, it's. I want to touch on this. So I want to go back to something that you just said, though, that I think was very, very apt, which is like the issue with the campaigns and the investigator cards, where you buy an investigator expansion and you have 5 different investigators to bring through a campaign, right? Like you can try them out with. But when you only have 1 campaign, you're going to see that same campaign over and over again. So maybe the reality is that with this new format, more campaigns is the way to go, right? Like that, even if there's like a shorter form, like a blister pack or something that's just like 3 scenarios, like a Night of the Zealot style thing, right? Like that might be something that they have to do. To add on what you
I'm
what
in
you
favor of that.
Yeah,
I'm in favor of that. I think that, I prefer the 8 scenario length. 7 to 8 is good for me. I would not enjoy a 3 scenario campaign as much, but maybe I would if they had a bunch of those a year, or if they released 2 of those a year instead of 1 8 scenario thing every 10 to 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, like I think they should still like I think I think that jumping a bit ahead here, but I think that tempering expectations, I actually feel like there won't be a lot of change in the release cadence. I still think we're going to see like 1 a year of each of them. That's just like what my gut is telling me. It's not what I hope, which we'll be touching on in a few, but that's like what my gut is telling me. Albeit they have 3 designers right now, and they are currently looking for a 4th. They're currently in the hiring process for another one. So maybe this is a sign that they're going to be picking up design going forward to kind of like fill the gap that things are. To go back to the FOMO, I definitely can relate to the people who are like, I need to buy everything, right? I need to own it physically. I need to be a completionist. But like, it's not how I am. I only own 2 standalones. And one of them is because Fantasy Flight Games sent it to me. And the other one is just because I was like, oh, Midwinter Gala, it sounds like a neat thing for me to pick up, right? So I've never been one who's like, I need to have everything for Arkham or I'm going to like miss out on my experience. And I think the big thing is that when stuff goes out of print, and because this isn't like Magic the Gathering where it's a competitive game where the amount of releases were so big that you could like buy individual singles or like that kind of thing, there's the digital version of Arkham that you can play on Tabletop Simulator that I think is going to do such a good job of providing these experiences for people who do want to play these campaigns that are out of print, which I think is very important to the longevity going forward as Fantasy Flight Games does this shift, right? Because Fantasy Flight Games realistically cannot keep everything in print. And I think it's good and exciting that the community is going to be able to do this and quote unquote keep things in print?
Yeah, so let me sort of address the FOMO in general with the campaigns. I agree. I mean, I said it before myself. Like, it's nice to have the ability to play everything. But from the business standpoint, which you're bringing up here, it's just not feasible. The game has been around for so long that if you missed out on something that was released a long time ago, think of it this way: like, maybe you're keeping up with the community by just getting all the new stuff, because we do way more about like the current campaigns, talking about the new cards, the campaigns themselves in the Discord, on our channels, than anything else, because we know that people are more likely to buy something that is talked about, and the community is going to talk about the new things for a while. Like, there's some amount of hype, et cetera, et cetera. And instead of just being like, I'll get there eventually, I think there's been like this idea that people should, in the existing format, play in release order. That includes the cards, right? I think it's kind of freeing to say, don't worry about that anymore. Just buy whatever. When you go in the store, you see something there, buy it, play it.
Take this, yes please, I'll take this and this. I agree completely. It makes it actually also removes so much baggage. I don't know if you've ever stepped outside the Arkham community and looked at discussions for Arkham Horror the card game, but it's actually pretty maligned due to the reason that there is so much that people say you need to buy into in order to play the game, where the recommendation that a lot of people give is the core set's not great, but when you pick up an campaign and investigator expansion, things pop off. And unfortunately, that's true. But then there's also the people who buy it in release order. You're going to want to pick it up like this, do this. The more you get, the more you'll love it. And all of this is unfortunately true, but now it becomes a lot easier where it's just you don't need to buy everything in order to experience Arkham Horror in the way that people say apparently you need to experience Arkham Horror. Instead, now it's just buy what's there and you'll be able to join in on the conversation immediately.
Because there's plenty of other games that you just can't find. I mean, there was limited release already, right? Like, they had something that was released, it's gone now, and so sorry. But you'll probably find some friends who might have old copies of stuff. Maybe you get it on Marketplace or something. Great. But the reality is that there's new stuff being released, and you will enjoy that too. And the FOMO of there were some interesting investigators or cards or campaigns that just aren't in print anymore, I think does a disservice to the game as it currently is. That you still can play and do well, mind you. And I'm excited that if the designers of the game have this in mind, that they're going to I mean, I can just explicitly say it now. We can talk about it more later. But the boxes will be more coherent, because honestly, you look back at Dunich, you look at Carcosa, the player cards that come in them and the investigators themselves are kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Even Forgotten Age, Beard and I were just talking about this. It's it's not until Circle Undone that they started to be wait a minute, what if we had synergies in our investigator expansions, And then also now that they're looking at even more under a microscope, where it's we have this investigator. How can we support this investigator? How can we support the investigator from the previous cycle? How can we support the investigator in the next cycle? As opposed to be how do we support everything? It's just this. And then also obviously these 5 heroes right here from the revised core, right? These guys are the most evergreen that can ever be evergreen, because the revised core, as far as we know, isn't going anywhere.
Hey, it's possible they get another edition, right?
Yep.
The revised core has been out for 4-ish years now, something like that. Who knows? They might decide that what's in here doesn't support the model going forward, and they need to add more stuff to it, add some reprints. Who knows? That is baseless speculation on my part. But it is a possibility, because they did it once before.
Yeah, to join in on the baseless theorizing here. Like, I could even see them eventually being like, okay, here's a revised core. We figured out that it's worth it if we sell this for $10 or $20 more, but you get 10 investigators in it as opposed to 5, right? Like, that could be something that they could do as well. And then they could bring back some old staples, right? Like, maybe they put the 5 Dunich investigators in this box, right? Like, as well, right? Because those Dunich investigators obviously were designed at the same time as these core investigators. They're very good at teaching players the game, and Jim Culver's there too. But like, these are all things that like could happen, right? We don't know. We don't know how things are going to shape up. Let's drop the. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was gonna say, just to circle back to the point of it's okay to play with what's out there. I think both of us have played a lot of limited card pool runs, and we're just here to reassure you that it is possible to win, and it is very fun to not just play with everything under the sun. And I also agree it is fun to play with everything under the sun, and that's not going away either.
Well, I mean, like, even from like a pure Spike wanna-win perspective, because actually, like, Travis and Bryn and I, we've talked briefly about this. You people might have heard them say some stuff in our videos as well. They're very positive about the change. I mean, they have like Magic the Gathering, which has had stuff out of print in forever and format changes. They also played Hearthstone when like they announced the change from Standard and Wild. This is just like, to them they were like, yeah, this is just inevitable. But what it does means is now that in the current card pool, you can explore in there, and then if you're a Johnny, you can be like, what can I cook up here? If you're a Timmy, there's always going to be fun cards. If you're a Spike, it's like, how can I find the best deck within these cards, right? So that's always going to exist no matter the card pool, but it's very important to, as they said and we've said, still just play Legacy, right? Like, if you want to play Legacy, play Legacy. If you want to play Current, play Current. If you want to play some weird abomination format, do that too, right? Like, that's all within your power.
Which we do.
Yes. All the time. But like, this is actually something that I've talked about previously on the channel, where I've mentioned I think that a very healthy thing for this game was to have a standard format where the designers are like, all right, for this 6 months, these 3 sets are the standard format, right? Like, these are what you play with if you want to play this format. Go out there, build decks, discuss decks about this format. We ultimately did end up getting that. That's a thing that's now actually real, but there is just some economic reasons for why it's happening as opposed to just doing it for the community, which I'm not opposed to. It's the thing I've wanted, and the economic side of it just makes it make sense as well, because I think that the game going forward needed to be this way.
So when I talked about this on my channel, there was one commenter, and I know you got, I think I got a lot of just negative comments because they thought I was like being very positive about this. And one person like called me like a shill for FFG for being like, this is just a business decision. Like, it is what it is. And we're going to roll with it and it'll be fine. And so it's just like, you know, why am I speaking for them? It's like, I'm not. Like, first off, like, FFG has never sent me anything for free. Like, as content creators, we were supposed to get, I think you got this email too, like the Hemlock Vale masks is a promo card and like a mat of Norman Withers decorating a Christmas tree, just as a thank you for doing the preview cards back in December, whatever. It is almost June. I've not received anything.
Yeah, no.
I don't speak for them. We are separate from them entirely. This is really just like, again, I can understand why they would do this, and I hate to say it this way, but like, they don't owe us anything. They are a business.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. This is our hobby too.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, my perspective is, we don't owe, like, they don't owe us anything, and then by nature, we don't owe them anything. So like,
absolutely.
It's, I'm a shill for Arkham Horror the card game. I love Arkham Horror the card game. But I'm not a shill like for FFG. I'm not here to be like, okay, so how can I like praise everything they're doing and like make everything seem like to defend them in all their actions. That happens a lot anyway, because once again, I'm pretty neutral to positive on most things in my life. Because that's just, in my opinion, a nicer way to live. You know, like it's just nicer to like not be negative about everything. But like I look back on the announcement article, like the announcement article I did for this when I did the video. I'm like, dude, that guy was morose. Like that guy was trying to be like, he was just trying to be like, there was no happy Justin in that video. That was just Justin. Like, so like, if that's kind of like what to, even I imagine there's people who might be here today thinking that we're trying to shill out for it, but I can assure you, even if you don't believe me, we're not.
No.
No.
No. And like at the end of the day, I don't care that much. It's really just the success of the game warrants this. And also, I think the game will continue to be successful because it's a good game. That part's not changing.
Yep, that's the thing that, like, I mean, obviously I want Arkham to keep going, one, because I am in this privileged position where I get to, you know, do this for a job, right? But two, because I love making content. I love it. I love this. Like, I love playing Arkham, and I love the game, and I love being able to play one of my favorite games ever made and like continue to play it and keep doing that. So if this is the sacrifice that has to happen for that, which I think maybe honestly should have actually happened probably when Edge of the Earth came out, I'm all for it. Like probably when the revised core set came out, this probably would have been a good time for that to also happen. But
it's just a bit too early. Maybe the pandemic and everything made it harder to see that. You know, there was all those shipping problems in the first place, but they made that other change about the big boxes. But yeah, I just feel like the game is, if people are down on this and they're kind of sad, like the game is suffering from success then. It's because designing a game with thousands of cards and balancing them all together and making campaigns that still, you know, quote unquote work is really difficult. And they have learned a lot about how they want this game to work over the years, and sometimes it's just good to be like, we don't want that anymore, and instead of, you know, making certain cards forbidden or something, they can just say, look, we'll split the format.
I also think that I've seen this people say this a lot too, where they're just like, I feel like I'm done. I feel like with Drowned City my collection's complete. And I think that's also a great way to look at it too, right? Like I've seen some people also say like, I'm going to keep buying campaign expansions, but I'm not going to buy investigator expansions anymore. And I think that that's also a great way to do it, right? Like it's if you are happy with your card pool, like you don't need to buy everything either, right? Like you can just be like, I'm happy with what I have, or like maybe you only buy like it's like Bryn didn't buy the Scarlet Keys campaign expansion because he's like, he's like, I'm not messing with that, right? But like he still buys all the investigator expansions because they are like the player cards are what's fun for him. So I feel like that's also something that you can do as a consumer, is use that power to be like, I can be a little bit pickier and choosier about what I want to buy here.
Okay, I made a little face just because I do think that some people have been a little pouty and they won't actually follow through on their kind of threats there. And but I, in principle, I agree that I've seen lots of deck lists out there, or even people playing decks where you don't notice that there are entire campaigns of cards that are missing. Like you just wouldn't even know because there's so many cards. So if you just don't happen to buy something, whether it's this set or a different set, because it's just like, my money is better spent elsewhere, I'm not going to get anything out of that, fine. To the really enfranchised player, I don't think it's like the $35 or whatever it would be for a new player card expansion. That, you know, they're probably going to find a way to buy it eventually if they're still enjoying playing the game. But that's just sort of me being skeptical of people who are being a little bit negative. The campaigns are a different story, right? If like the campaign hook isn't interesting for you, then you don't need to buy it. Like you're not losing anything by not playing through a campaign. But if you really like building decks and there's like maybe 15 cards in the new expansion that you like, you'll probably find some time to buy it. Again, not trying to shill for FFG here, but if this is your hobby and you've already bought, you know, hundreds of dollars worth of stuff, like adding another one, and that you're going to keep, if you're going to continue playing the game regularly, you're probably going to find time to buy these.
Yeah. Let me go for a second on the opposite side, where if you are looking at a thing where you're feeling like FOMO, unless you have the money to do it, don't do it.
Yeah.
I know that like I go into like whenever I see someone post on like online about like, here, I bought the entire Arkham collection in like 1 month. In my head, I'm like, oh, this is okay. They're a CEO. They can afford this. You know, like there's, it's one of those things where like just the hobby, the board game hobby as a whole is very predatory in how it does things. So, if you are worried about the FOMO of not being able to own a campaign, change that to the perspective of, I might not be able to own it, but I can still play it digitally, right? That is the thing that I think is for just giving me comfort, because I can't recommend people to go and like, I agree, like if you ever, like if you already bought a bunch and like in your budget you have the ability to buy another one, just keep buying them if they interest you, right? But
yeah,
don't go into debt for Arkham. The game's great, but it's not like don't worry about it. Just just don't stress about it that much. Yeah. There's
a special circle of hell reserved for the people who post those pictures of like an entire collection and are just like, you know, I don't want to say flaunting, but they're just like, look what I just got. And it's like, great. You know, we love that for you. And you're right. Like those are people who probably have a bunch of cash to burn, and good for them. But that is not a standard at all.
Yeah.
When I bought my paper collection, I did it kind of piece by piece. I was still doing that back in the time when there were the blister packs, and I was looking for Phantom of Truth for a long time.
Yep.
Eventually got it.
Yeah. Just have to be patient, and also like browse Board Game Geek. I mean, like as we just said though, Dunich just got reprinted. So I imagine, again, this is all here like hearsay, we can't say anything, but with Dunich reprinted, I imagine they're gonna do like boom, boom, boom of maybe not Dream Eaters, because like maybe not some of the new revised ones, but like maybe like up to Forgotten Age Circle, they might reprint them again. They did imply that like there's gonna be like one print run, and we don't know if we were in it or if it's about to happen, right? Like that print run might have happened. But just because people are going to sell, board game is a hobby that actually has a lot of a big thing where it's like people are constantly like rotating their collections around as well. You might be able to pick stuff up in the future.
Yeah, I had a friend, I was at BGG Con this past weekend, and I had a friend who, there was a marketplace type of thing going on one of the mornings, who bought a, let's see, it was the 2 copies of the original core Dunich. I think it was just maybe the original deluxe pack of Carcosa, but then all of Edge of the Earth and all of the 5 starter investigators. And I think they got it for like $80.
Yeah. That's really good.
And it was all sleeved, and everything was there. So that's really good. Like there's plenty. Again, not for everyone. If you're outside of the United States or North America, I suppose, in general, Europe, it may be harder to find this stuff. And I understand that. Yeah.
Especially also like in different language translations too. I imagine those are going to be trickier. I know some people
some of it's easier to find.
Yeah, that
right?
is true, yeah.
I think
I've
seen people talk about like Return to Night of the Zealot in German or something has been available for a while. I don't know.
Yeah, just learn it. I mean, honestly, even pick it up. Like if you like don't speak German, but you find like a German copy of a Return to, pick it up. Why not, right? You can look up the card, you'll learn the card, you'll memorize the cards eventually. Like it's harder for campaign cards. Like this is mostly for player cards. But I think like realistically, most people want the player cards more than they want the campaigns. That's just like what my feelers out there is, that people are more upset about like not being able to play a Will Yorick deck as opposed to not being able to play Path to Carcosa. There's obviously people who are upset they won't be able to play Path to Carcosa, but I feel like the investigators are the bigger identity for this game, because you can only play Path to Carcosa with Will Yorick once, but you can play Will Yorick in every other campaign as well.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it in that way. I do feel like you can proxy player cards better than you can proxy campaigns, though.
100%.
But yeah, I mean, it's probably, you don't want to just write on a piece of paper, this is Will Yorick, rather than actually try to pick him up.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also another thing too, is that I feel like proxying, you should, if like, because as you were saying, there's a lot of times people build decks and it's like, what's from Dream Eaters here? Oh, it's Brute Force and Survivor, right? You can be like, all right, well, I'm gonna just put Brute Force. I'm gonna like print out the card, go to Arkham build, print this picture of 45 automatic, and then slide it into a sleeve, right? That's very doable for you to do, and I think proxying is healthy and a good thing, because Arkham doesn't have a lot of it doesn't have like tournaments, like it's not like Magic the Gathering or Flesh and Blood or Star Wars Unlimited, where they're doing these tournaments where you're playing for money. You're literally playing for fun in your living room, right? So like, do what makes it easier for you to have that fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to print and proxy an entire campaign once they're out of print, go for that as well. But my condolences to your hand if you don't have an automatic cutter to cut out all those cards. I wouldn't just do it just because I'm lazy. But if I'm gonna like proxy 1 or 2 cards from my deck, or even my investigator card, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Can you imagine proxying a campaign? Getting the right number of everything sounds impossible too.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, Travis did it. He proxied a standalone scenario once, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do that again."
The only thing I don't own is Barkham.
Yep.
I don't need to own Barkham. That's not something I care about that much, but I'm not about to. I haven't even thought about trying to print it out or something like that. It's okay. I can let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's actually an interesting thing for us to talk about as well, because I think that Barkham and the Return Twos are, I think, 2 examples of how things started to go out of print, and then the reaction to them in the community, right? They're a little bit more niche than the actual investigator campaign, the investigator packs and the campaign expansions, but I think it's a sort of a similar trend where ultimately now it's okay, and people are starting to be like, it's fine that I don't have those because new things are being printed again, right? Like, that's the most important part of this that comes with it, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So when it comes to the player cards from the Return Twos, it's really interesting to look at the design philosophy for the first 4 of them, but everything but Circle Undone, right? All of those were upgrades or downgrades of existing cards.
Yeah.
And in many cases, they are completely unnecessary, right? Hot Streak level 2 in Return of Night of Zealot is a fine card if you have like Rogue 2 access and you don't want the level 4 version, right?
Yeah.
But it turns out that since that was printed and now no one can find it anyway, who cares, right? You have Faustian Bargain, you have Bank Job. There's other cards that do basically the same thing. So I think that a lot of the cards in the Return Twos, until Circle Undone in particular, I would say, are just other versions of things you already have.
Yeah.
And you could easily proxy. As you see here, all the different tarot cards that came out, both the card tarots and then the actual big tarot cards, those are like different things. They are different cards that didn't exist before. And I'm sad to see those not available because they are just new design space. All the rest of them, I mean, you can get by with the other version, with maybe the exception of like Stealth 3 for Kaimani Jones. And I hope that in the future, when they're, I've kind of mentioned this before, making new cards with investigators, they don't just try to litter the parts of archetypes or things for investigators all over different sets. Because it may have been in the past that they used some of the, hey, that card would be really good in my favorite investigator as a means to sell the products.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this would be fun. Maybe pick this up. You don't care about half of the other cards as much, but wouldn't it be cool to, have Stealth 3 for this deck? And just don't do that anymore, please. You don't need to do that. Just make it all come in one box, and then you can move on to a different archetype later.
Yes. I think this is also a great time for us to hop into the reprints thing, because I have seen so many different things about people talking about reprints, where I've even seen people say 50% of a box is going to be a reprint.
Yeah, I've seen numbers that are pulled out of someone's ass, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's just like it's out of this world, because again, we don't know anything. What they said in the stream, and I'm going to paraphrase this, so I'm not going to get it exactly right, was that we may be able to reprint cards or revisit cards in future cycles, right? That was just them being like, if there was a card that was super crucial for an investigator, we might see a reprint here. But then suddenly people heard that and said, oh, 25% of the box is going to be reprints. Oh, 40% of the box is going to be reprints. There's people who rightly say, if a box is mostly reprints, I'm not going to buy the box. But that's basing on just this statement that just because they said we might reprint things, there is going to be all these reprints in boxes, right? I'm of the opinion that I'm not worried about reprints, because what are the designers going to do if the box is mostly reprints, right? Like, even like 25% reprints, so there's two things that happen, right? If the box is mostly reprints, that means that the designers aren't designing, right? What's going on then? So the designers are going to design because making player cards is fun, right? Making campaigns is fun. But if a box is 25% reprints, that means that time that they spent doing those reprints is going to be spent on other things. So maybe it means that we're going to get more player card expansions, right? If that does happen. I'm of the belief, though, that there's going to be no, the reprints are going to be small to actually none going forward. Just because...
So we have reprints.
Yeah. We
have them in the 5 investigator starter decks already.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go too, where into my hopes and dreams for the future releases, but that's the place to do that thing. We have those things. Like, I have a few copies of Take Heart now. I think I have 6 copies of Take Heart, which is 2 more than people normally have. But and funnily enough, people didn't really complain about those then, which might be a little bit suspect, and I might be quick to be pointing fingers where I shouldn't be pointing fingers at. But I just feel like ultimately, if that is the cadence that there is a release, like if they're of reprints and releases, I think that ultimately it's going to be okay.
Yeah. So are there any cards that you would like to see reprinted, or feel like things are going away that need to be... They're staples that are outside of the revised core set or something like that?
I think it's more interesting if cards die. I think it's like, again, in the current format, in Legacy, I'm happy to play everything, right? Like, I'm happy to revisit Peter Sylvester. I'm happy to touch my Resourceful and use my Resourceful as a survivor, right? Happy to play some Seeker card, like Dream Diary, right? Like, I love Dream Diary decks, right? But when those cards leave, I think ultimately it's going to be better and more interesting, because new cards are going to fill those spaces. And if I want to play with those cards, I still can. I don't want to see them be like... so like it's a good example of what you were just saying with like Faustian Bargain and Bank Job, right? I think what's important is if every few cycles we see those cards have a new form, so people can continue to have good economy, right? I think to me that's more important than touching like for example Backpack 2. I think Backpack 2 should just die. I think it should just be like, we don't need to worry about reprinting it. When I said previously in the past it should get reprinted, that was with the idea of cards always existing. But now that there's a format where cards are no longer going to always exist, those cards can like go away, right? For like that kind of stuff.
Backpack 2 can go, but not before June something.
Yeah,
right?
not before when is it? June 2nd?
June 2nd?
June 1st, yeah.
Oh, okay, soon.
Yeah,
You'll see. But, okay, this is like not shifting gears, but I'm going to put on a different hat here and just sort of say, I think the balance in the game is better when people don't have access to literally 10 copies of various kinds of things, and they're limited to just a few. So when you mention about Faustian Bargain, Bank Shop, etc., as being economy. I want there to be good economy in the game, but there doesn't need to be a deck with all economy. And maybe it's not economy that I'm really referring to, but more like the draw cards. Or these, thank you, here they are, Arcane Research, Down the Rabbit Hole, etc. Pick one, right? A new format allows the designers to say, like, this is the XP granting card available to you now. If you want to be a crazy person and include all of these things to get, way more XP than you ever could need in a campaign, then great, play the legacy content. I don't care. But as far as the design space goes, it's way better for the designers, and I think for the players who are having a healthy conversation about the game, to be limited in only having a certain number of particular effects. But it's then incumbent on the designers to make sure that those things are there. And probably the third time I've said this, but they need to include kind of these packages of cards in over like one or two sets, rather than you having to cobble them together. We've talked about this for Survivor Week just happened, about how so many of these archetypes were only recently completed or revisited. I don't want to see that. I want to see all of these things available at once when they're needed, and then they can rotate out.
Yep.
When you move on to something else.
Yep. And I know also, like, these are great examples for, like, this exact rotation that you and I are both talking about here. When Great Work came out, people were like, oh my god, another one? Like, another card here? It's going to be insane. But then, about, like, I don't know, a month or two later, they were like, guess what? We're rotating. Like, things are going to be leaving print, and we're going to have different formats. That makes the Great Work make a lot more sense, right? Because if you think about it, like, Forgotten Age, we had we had Circle Undone, Dream Eaters, Innsmouth, fourth cycle, we got Down the Rabbit Hole. Scarlet Keys, Hemlock, Drowned City, right? So, like, a smaller bump for the Great Work, but conveniently, that's the number of cycles that they said they were probably going to be keeping in print once it's announced, 3 cycles. So in theory, this is the XP boost to help remedy some of the Mystic problems that were in the revised core for Experience.
And I would say that this was, like, always intended. They didn't really, when they printed Down the Rabbit Hole, think that you were, not you, but the general casual player who picks up the box from the store, they aren't going to be like, I'm going to put in the thick of it Arcane Research and also spend my my in the thick of it XP on Karen's Obel and just go nuts. Like, they were not designing Down the Rabbit Hole with that in mind. They were designing it in mind of, here's what's available to you in Edge of the Earth probably, and maybe some other things around it. They weren't thinking, they didn't want to limit themselves, and now they explicitly are telling you that we're not limiting ourselves by having to keep in mind the literal 1,000 cards that are in the game.
Yeah, and I think Enraptured too is another example of kind of like this philosophy coming into play, and we're going to see some stuff that suddenly are like, holy hell, this card's busted with X Investigator, but conveniently X Investigator is no longer in current, right? So that's going to impact that kind of thing. So like Enraptured, Practice Makes Perfect, and Amanda Sharp, those cards are not going to exist in current, but they've said, by the way, Legacy is going to always remain strong and just get stronger. And it turns out in every game that has when you're playing the formats, that's the full card pool, that is the strongest format. That's just inevitable. So having some now purposeful restrictions on it, I think is going to lead to better design and better boxes going forward. And I think what it's also going to mean is stronger boxes going forward. I think that the design team right now are actually very good at making incredibly balanced cards. I think while also still being very good. And I think that they're going to start pumping it up a little bit because they're now thinking in only a 3 expansion slice as opposed to how do we make sure we don't tip the scales too much and break things that are already pretty broken.
So if you look at Enraptured, it's a really good level 2 version. It's a really good indication, and you've touched on this a number of times about how the way that this design team views charges is different than it used to be. And if you look at this in the legacy perspective, you could say, oh, they just want you to have charges all over the place. But that's not really fair, because what they're looking at is, I have these assets that are 9 charges and you go through them like crazy. The new Breath of the Sleeper, Eyes of the Dreamer. And that's what they want charges to be like. If you are looking at this card and saying, well, I can fill up my whatever, Cryptic Grimoire, we've played that, and just go nuts with that, well, that's not what this card was designed for, right? And they didn't want to say, I can't design my card because of something that is not in print, right? And I think it's unfair to the design team to suggest that what they can design is going to have to take into account literally every combination that exists.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yep.
If you want to play something busted, play something busted. But otherwise, this is like, they don't have to keep the old design philosophy around because they want to try something different. And this card makes sense with a new design philosophy.
For sure. All right, we have 4 minutes left before I like to do this to an hour. So let's just kind of rapid fire. I got 2 questions, 2 quick talking points I want to go about here. Investigators, would you like to see Investigators reimagined, or do you want to see them to continue to explore new Investigator designs, like in terms of like new characters, like a firefighter, for example? People said they wanted a firefighter.
I'm not like deep in the lore for this game, for Arkham Horror, so I would be happy to see new Investigators and not just have like a new version of Captain America, because people know Captain America. So, you know, if Jenny Barnes is never seen again, oh well. Yeah.
In my perfect world, I would love a mix of both. I would love for them to touch on some redesigns, like, for example, like a different class for an investigator, but it's like a brand new design. But I think their new investigator like characters have been very good, and I'd love to see more of them. I
think parallels are good for this already. Like, if they want to print some of those, and that, because we already have a way of a different version of Roland, right?
It is true. So, like, do we really need 3 Rolands? That's like the question. The answer to that question is probably no, but there's going to be someone out there who's probably going to say yes. Do you have any hopes for the releases? Like, any on your wish list?
Like what comes out of the new releases, or the types of releases?
Yeah, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like personally, I'm more into the campaigns. I think I don't want to say there's enough player cards, but I want to see more from the design team on the campaigns. And if we got a couple of them, and maybe some investigator starter boxes, I think that would be cool to come in. I'm not necessarily looking forward to anything right now. I feel like we just got the Drowned City, and I'm still hyped on all of that. That anything that comes later, we'll see it when it comes. I don't really care right now because I'm happy with the toys I already have, you know?
Yeah. For me, my perfect wish list is they retire the current starter packs and make 5 new starter packs to better fill the holes of the the current deck. Or, I mean, like, they could alternatively just keep the current starter decks in print, but I feel like it would be more exciting to get 5 new ones that they can be like, okay, so here is the design philosophy of all these years, and these are the packs for these investigators. I think this would also be the best way, if they did do reprints, to do reprints in those packs. I also think it wouldn't be bad if they like rotated the starter decks like every 3 years as well. I think that could be really good for the game.
I said it before, but I would love to see a bigger revised core just to accommodate more, because I think honestly the cards in the revised core are a little weird.
Yes. Yep. I agree a lot on that. The upgrade choices were a little bit strange. All right, last question. It's been on my mind for a very long time. I've been thinking about it all the time. How are you going to approach content creation with Legacy and Current? Do you have any plans on how you're going to do that?
Yeah. So it really depends on what my idea is for a deck. The thing that I'm going to miss the most going forward is there's some interesting idea in an investigator that's new or old that just isn't possible with a smaller card pool. Of course, that depends on what on earth is in current. We just don't know.
Yeah.
So if there's some cool idea that I want to showcase or just see if it works, I will allow myself to use the cards. I never have tried to play like super busted decks in the first place to like abuse some of these cards that I don't think were designed with each other in tandem. And that's fine. But I think I will continue to play a variety of different formats because that's what I already do. And I think for newer players especially, showcasing that we do think about them and want to show what you can do with a smaller card pool is the way to go.
Yep. I'm excited to have different things that I can cover. So like 1 week I can be like, I'm going to record a bunch of current videos. And the next week I'm like, let's go back to some legacy craziness and see what I can do in there. I think it's very exciting for me as a content creator. I've also been like, I've wanted to make a video at least for the 5 core set investigators, and then like Drowned City and Hemlock at the least, which is like, how does this investigator look in current? And then there's also like so many videos of being like, oh, when what we say bye to when things rotate out into legacy, like what are we going to miss the most from these cycles? There's just so much that is going to be exciting to talk about for this in Arkham that I just can't freaking wait to do.
We just need to know more. Yeah, I think the other part of it is beyond just gameplay. Like, how do we talk about deck building? How do we talk about, even like here are all the cards that you could choose to do some kind of a build, an archetype. Like that's gonna have to just have a little asterisk and say, look, these are cards that are the sets that they're from. You may or may not be able to use them. Okay, but it's more gonna be like talking about the game. It's like we have to highlight the cards that really are available and not say, what makes this whole deck work? It's Backpack 2.
Yeah, or do you know who's a great ally that you should put in this deck? Like Peter Sylvester, right? Like,
right.
Really make things, showcase why current is, and like what you can do in current, which I think is important.
You know what would make this deck better? A Runic Axe.
Yeah. So, yeah, Cyclopean Hammer. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I'm joking there, but the whole point of that is that an environment that is smaller and maybe more focused is going to breed better deck building abilities and not just focusing on, well, of course you should put this card in every single time.
Yep.
So it's better for you, I think. I'm not pointing to you, I'm talking to the viewer here. If we don't just have a bunch of old standbys that always go in decks because they won't be available for one, but also it gets you to take advantage of the new product that is actually out there.
I also think what it does for, once again, pointing to you, the new players, if you come in and you join a discussion thread where like, hey, here's my deck, what changes would you recommend current format? Then people aren't like, oh, do you have this expansion, you should do this, or being like the question, what's your collection? You can just say like, because I think in the long term, when people talk about current, people know people are going to be talking about paper. And then as soon as it goes to legacy, I imagine most of the conversations are going to be happening in a digital space. So it becomes a less of what do you own and more like, here's what exists in the legacy pool that you should try exploring with this deck. But with current, it's like it basically just restricts the conversation to everyone being on the same page, which is good.
So can I ask you a question just to sort of end things up? So what do you have to say for people who are not sure if they want to play both versions or are still a little bit hesitant about the news, even without any more information about it?
The most important thing is that play Arkham in the way that you have fun playing Arkham. And if you are no longer having fun playing Arkham, stop playing Arkham for a bit, right?
Yep.
Like, there is just have fun. If you have fun, switch between the formats, do that. If you have fun only playing Legacy, do that. If you have fun only playing Current, do that, right? Like, do what is most fun for you. Like, if you decide for some reason that you only want to play Current and you're like one of those people who in Hearthstone dust all the cards when they rotate out and you just like sell your expansions, you're going to make someone else very happy, right? I imagine a lot of people aren't going to be like that, but if that's what's fun to you when this format changes, like frickin' do it and have fun doing it.
And just talk over with people you're playing with, because they might have different philosophies on that. And as long as you're all in agreement, Because to be honest, like if one person in the group is playing with everything and the other people are trying to just go with current, they might feel like something's a bit off. That one person is playing with maybe a different set of rules even. But maybe that's something to talk about in a future video about whether or not you should mix or match the formats at one table. But
I mean, I think you shouldn't. I think you shouldn't. I think it's too. But I think what you should do in that case is you should just try to like be a grown-up and like talk through the table, and then also be like, okay, so we're gonna do a current and then we're gonna do legacy, and we're gonna like flip between them, right? I think that is the way to make sure everyone is having fun playing Arkham.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that was fun. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more of this, you know what to do. Leave a like, a comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We're gonna do more focused videos, but we're also like topics like this. But we're also gonna do podcasts where we're just gonna be talking about how things are going in how we're playing Arkham. So it's gonna be a little bit more chill. We'll probably try that out for the next one of these. So keep your eye on that, because if you don't know, on this channel, a lot of times I use you guys watching as how I shape the content. So definitely let me know down in the comments. But thanks for joining me for this, Daniel. It was a good chat. I think we covered not everything on our list, but I think still a good amount of stuff there. Yeah.
Big surprise. Not doing everything in an hour.
Yeah. And also, huge thank you to all the patrons and also everyone else who is just watching. And also Fantasy Flight, as I said yesterday in my Discord, just please tell us about current. Just I just want to know so I can start like actually making content for it, and then also like so people can just like, I understand why you guys made the announcement article so early, right? But I wish it was just a little bit less early. But it'll come. Bye!